What's up, Taiwan? I'm Louise with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. After 15 months of war, there's relief and elation in Gaza as Israel and Hamas agree to a ceasefire deal. Months of negotiations and peace talks have resulted in a truce that will see the gradual release of the hostages in Gaza, as well as Palestinian detainees. Rosie Greninger has this story.
Jubilation among Palestinians in the streets of Gaza as an agreement is reached for a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. War has been raging here for 15 months, with Israel relentlessly bombing the enclave of 2 million people. The assault in response to Hamas's October 7th attack on the country, which left 1,200 dead. Now more than 46,000 people have lost their lives here, and after months of negotiations, an end to the bloodshed is finally in sight.
كل ساعة بنقول ندعي الله وتوقف الحرب، احنا يا جماعة بدنا نريح، بدنا نعيش بأمان ونشكر الله ونحمده، إلا في هذه الساعة سمعنا خبر كويس الحمد لله.
والله طرت من الفرحة، فرحان بس برضه في نفس الوقت زعلان إنه الواحد يرجع على بيته فاقد أحفاد، فاقد أبو، فاقد أخو، فاقد ابن عم، فاقد جيران، فاقد داره. ليش بدنا نقول؟ الحمد لله.
Mediated by Qatar and the US, the truce was reached in Doha and is set to begin in 3 days on the 19th of January, as long as it's approved by the Israeli cabinet. The initial 6-week phase will include the withdrawal of Israeli forces from central Gaza and the return of displaced Palestinians to the northern part of the Strip. Hamas will release 33 of the nearly 100 hostages still in their custody, including women, children and elderly. In return, Israel will release 30 Palestinian detainees per hostage. Of the 251 people taken from Israel by Hamas on October 7th, 105 were released during a temporary ceasefire in November. After this upcoming exchange, Hamas will continue to hold more than 60 hostages, although tens of them are presumed dead. In Tel Aviv, where demonstrators had been asking their government to bring the hostages home, a mix of reactions to the news of the deal.
It's not a joy, it's a bitter relief, but it's going to be a huge relief first of all, whenever I see offer. Secondly, whenever I'm going to see the last hostages crossing the border.
I'm afraid that our government, especially I'm afraid from our government, that they will do something wrong to stop the agreement.
The first 6-week phase will also see 600 truckloads of aid flow into Gaza daily, urgently needed in the enclave suffering from a humanitarian crisis with a lack of clean water, food and medical necessities. Outgoing US President Joe Biden held the agreement and the intense diplomacy under his administration that helped secure it.
This has been a time of real turmoil in the Middle East, but as I prepare to leave office, our friends are strong, our enemies are weak, and there's a genuine opportunities for a new future.
But President-elect Donald Trump has also claimed credit for the truce, which will come into effect just a day before his inauguration, saying it was his involvement in the last stages that pushed the deal through. An assertion that didn't go down too well with the outgoing leader.
Who takes credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke?
Once the reins in the US are handed over to Trump, negotiations over the second phase will begin, expected to include a permanent ceasefire and complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. A third phase will then decide the long-term future of the enclave, but as its residents celebrate the temporary end to fighting, there is still much trepidation about the hurdles to come before they can finally put the war behind them. James Lin and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
With US President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration just days away, the country's capital is getting ready for a transition of power. Leslie Liao reports now from Washington.
High security here in Washington, D.C. as the U.S. gears up for President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration, which is in a few days. All this week, Trump's cabinet picks have been having their Senate confirmation hearings. On Tuesday, Secretary of Defense pick Pete Hegseth had his. Meanwhile, on Wednesday, 6 of Trump's cabinet picks had their hearings, including Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi and Secretary of State nominee Marco Rubio. Despite being one of the less contentious picks on Trump's cabinet, Rubio had his hearing disturbed by protesters during his opening statement.
Pause.
Taiwan will send a delegation to attend Trump's inauguration. Legislative Speaker Han Kuo-yu of the Kuomintang will be leading a group of lawmakers here to Washington, D.C. to shore up ties with this incoming U.S. administration. Leon Lien, Laurel Stewart, and Leslie Liao in Washington, D.C. for TaiwanPlus.
For more updates from the US on Trump's inauguration, stay tuned to TaiwanPlus. President Lai Ching-te has met with a delegation of lawmakers that will represent Taiwan at Trump's inauguration. Tiffany Wong has been following the meeting and joins us live now from the newsroom in Taipei. Tiffany, what was Lai's message to these lawmakers?
In a meeting at the presidential office today, President Lai Ching-te urged this cross-party delegation to put on a show of unity as they prepare to attend U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration. The delegation of 8 is led by opposition heavyweight Han Kuo-yu, who is the Speaker of the Legislature here in Taiwan, and will also include 3 opposition lawmakers from the Kuomintang, as well as 3 from the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, and 1 lawmaker from the smaller opposition, Taiwan People's Party. Now, these 3 parties have been fighting throughout the past year, sometimes even coming to fists over divisive legislation. But President Lai used this moment to urge them to put aside their differences and overcome the country's internal conflicts as they prepare to represent Taiwan on the global stage. And he urged them to remember to uphold Taiwan's commitment to global democracy.
在复杂多变的国际新局当中，在国家面临艰难的挑战之下，我要特别强调，在福尔摩沙，没有什么仇恨放不下，也没有什么不快过不去。目前最重要的就是团结。
President Lai also urged the delegation to consult with Vice President Bi Khim-hsiao, who had attended U.S. President Joe Biden's inauguration in 2021 when she was Taiwan's de facto ambassador to the U.S.
And Tiffany, why is the Speaker leading the delegation this time?
Well, Taiwan typically sends the Speaker of the Legislature to the U.S. inauguration, so this is really a return to precedent. Vice President Bi Khim-hsiao attended as the de facto ambassador in 2021 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Taiwan didn't send a full envoy from the country itself. Now, as the U.S. does not officially recognize Taiwan as one of its allies, it would be unusual if Taiwan sent anyone higher-ranking official from perhaps the presidential office. But what's unusual this time is that Han is from the main opposition party. Now, Han did thank President Lai for this opportunity, and he said that he knew that he's not just representing the country at this time, but also the 23 million people of Taiwan. And he put forth his own goals for this delegation.
我们整个台湾的安全就像一张桌子的4只脚，台湾的安全也是4只脚。第一只脚保护中华民国，第二只脚保护自由民主，第3只脚维护美台关系，第4只脚维护两岸和平。
Han emphasized many of the lawmakers' educational backgrounds in the U.S. As well as in other countries, and he said that he hoped that this could give them an international perspective and make significant contributions to the U.S.-Taiwan relationship. He also emphasized some of their contributions in fields like public health, where Taiwan stood out as a model during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, while they're in the U.S., the delegation is also set to meet with other U.S. officials, as well as think tanks and the overseas Taiwanese community, hoping to begin their work in strengthening Taiwan-U.S. ties in this new administration.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was Tiffany Wong in our newsroom. Taiwan's Navy will help out the Coast Guard if needed to respond to any suspicious activity near the country's undersea cables. Taiwan's defense minister made the announcement after a Chinese-linked ship was suspected of damaging a communications cable earlier this month. The ship is owned by a Hong Kong company, which has denied involvement. The incident alarmed Taiwan as it faces military and other pressures from China.
一旦有发现这样的一个状况的时候，我想我们海巡会先出去。那如果海巡需要海军策应的话，我想我们也会出去立即协同。
Taiwan's National Security Bureau says it will also look at how China might be sailing around Taiwan using ships registered to other countries. Taiwan's lawmakers remain deeply divided over this year's budget. They've so far failed to agree on a single one of the more than 3,000 items up for discussion. John Van Trieste reports on how tempers are flaring.
Shouting and name-calling in the legislature as partisan grievances flare. Lawmakers have almost 3,300 budgetary items to clear for the year ahead, from military spending to the budget on media, including TaiwanPlus. And they've yet to get on the same page about even one of them. When they reconvene later Thursday, the temperature is unlikely to come down. Controversial recent bills affecting things like the Constitutional Court have the ruling Democratic Progressive Party and the chief opposition party, the Kuomintang, at each other's throats. Both sides are now threatening each other with a nuclear option, a mass nationwide recall campaign. They hope to wipe out the opponent's caucus. These threats helped derail Wednesday's attempt at budget talks.
老子国民党全部罢掉。
院长，对不起，请问一下，大罢免跟预算什么？
But this wasn't the only loss of cool during the meeting. And Taiwan's third party, the Taiwan People's Party, is angry at the DPP too. It's incensed at what it sees as the politically motivated corruption charges against its founder, Ko Wen-je. Now, it's also angry at accusations its proposed 3% military budget cut is motivated by sympathy for China. The party says the military budget has gone down steadily under the rule of both the other parties.
来谈说要帮韩国瑜办告别演说，来进行人身攻击，来进行抹红，大概整个过程就是这样。所有看到整个协商过程。
There was some substantive discussion. On the defense budget, there was debate about how much to spend on Taiwan's domestic submarine program. But here, too, disagreement about the facts, in this case, how much the defense minister had asked for, brought talks to a halt.
那他只要用2亿，为什么要编个20亿？所以18亿的冻结是这样子来的。但是呢，铺天盖地的这些网军跟侧翼一直在攻击我们。
顾部长认可潜舰预算冻结18亿元的相关共识的一个内容，并非事实。国防部立场始终未曾改变，即为争取预算全数通过。
With no progress, Speaker Han Kuo-yu called a recess until Thursday. But the fraught political atmosphere isn't going away, and it could be some time before lawmakers can cool down enough to start making a dent in the significant amount of work ahead of them. Joseph Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Lawyers for South Korea's detained President Yoon Yeol say he won't submit to any more questioning. Authorities detained the president on Wednesday over his brief declaration of martial law. Some of Yoon's supporters have gathered outside the anti-corruption agency that's investigating whether his declaration amounted to attempted rebellion. Yoon's lawyers say the investigation is illegal. Yoon has remained silent during more than 10 hours of questioning, according to an investigating official. The National Assembly has already voted to impeach Yoon, but a court will have the final say. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. I'm Louise Watt. Take care. Do join us next time.